Today we have the leading specialists from science and technology fields with us who will share their unique insights into how investments into cutting-edge technologies can actually help propel sustainable economic growth. Uranik corporate innovation is one of the key strategic pillars of Plug and Play. And you work with some of the largest corporations around the world, including the likes of Mercedes-Benz, Coca-Cola and Bayer, who really benefit from your extensive network of startups, innovative startups, over 50,000, I believe, a very impressive figure. So first of all, can the plug and play model of corporate innovation be replicated in our Adria region? And second of all, what kind of different models of collaboration do you offer to corporates that are interested to explore this kind of model?
Thank you so much, Maša. I hope you can hear me well. First of all, let me say I'm delighted to be back in Porto Montenegro for the second edition of ESG Adria Summit, and of course being part of this esteemed panel. I will be very brief on what you said. I don't think we need to replicate. I think what the region really needs is to really join the global movement of what is happening around the world and really embed all of our innovation efforts through government, through corporates, even at the startup and research level with the global movement. So obviously we live in the innovation era, and where innovation is almost in our daily vocabulary used in different ways and forms. So the ability of our region to really integrate the innovative solutions and to make them available for global clients and corporates, I think it's imperative for our success as a region and growth as well. Hence, if we want to translate that, it will be for the well-being of our citizen. Throughout the days, we've heard about the brain drain factor. So our ability to help corporates to stay at the edge of innovation and competitiveness as well as cooperation with young innovative ideas, people, researchers, startups, and so on and so forth, as well as the involvement of governments, as small as they are and fragile as they are, I think really is the success of what we would need in the region. So with that being said, yes, we are and we ought to be following that model which Plug and Play is really offering. And my role as a director for Plug and Play is particularly this one, to look at the partnerships with governments or the needs, to assess the needs of governments and corporates as well as startups in terms of investment, and to really be a facilitator of this dialogue in order to advance our joint innovation agenda further up.
My next question is for Matjaž. So Matjaž, you represent the scientific side. And we know that climate science has really evolved rapidly over the past couple of decades, probably because we are all getting stressed up about the changing climate and the negative consequences of that. So we know that the role of ocean in climate science is very important, first of all, because they are the largest carbon sink globally. They absorb carbon dioxide, but also the excess heat generated by GHG emissions. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the most exciting areas of oceanographic research and science that you are working on? And particularly, what kind of possible applications do you see coming out of this basic research to solving the climate change mitigation and adaptation challenges?
I would like to thank you for inviting me. It's my first time in Montenegro, and I'm already looking forward to coming back. As for the scientific part of your question, I would say briefly that there are two very exciting things that are happening, let's say, in scientific oceanography right now. And one thing is in the field of, let's say, ocean biogeochemistry. And the reason I'm excited about this is that we tend to think of rainforests as the lungs of the planet. But 2/3 of the oxygen that we breathe comes from the phytoplankton of the surface layer of the ocean. And there are enormous gaps of knowledge that we have about this system. And lately, what has been coming out of scientific research was a coupling between physics and biogeochemistry. And this means an enormous increase of complexity in our capability of modeling, really enormously more capable systems, more complex systems than we were only a couple of decades ago. So I would say this is one thing, the coupling between physics and biogeochemistry. And the other thing, so the second most exciting thing, I think, is, like in many fields, deep learning. So deep learning is a new computational paradigm which enables us to tackle problems which are too complex to be tackled with how we were used to doing science, let's say, for the past 300 years. So long story short, coupling of different scales, spatial and temporal scales, in ocean, in physics, biogeochemistry, that's one exciting thing. And the other thing is deep learning, which may help us address this complexity.
Thank you, Matjaž. We continue with the scientific side with Vesna. Vesna, since in less than 10 years since you co-founded the BioSense Institute, it has really become one of the most prominent scientific institutions, I would say, in the region, but also affecting at the global level the scientific community through its scientific advancements and application, particularly of digital technologies to agriculture. You're personally the recipient and the coordinator of the largest ever EU investment into research in Serbia, which is the 30 million euros Horizon Europe project called Antares. This is only one of the many investments. What are the key outcomes of these investments for the scientific community and for the economic development of the Adria region?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here and for posing this question. Because usually when we talk about investments into research, that is perceived as kind of a social program or like that you should invest in science. But with this 30 million euros, we managed to first create research infrastructure that you cannot find anywhere in the, let's say, circle of 1,000 kilometers around Serbia. We created 200 new jobs directly, and those are high-level jobs with PhD levels and Masters of Science. We indirectly supported around 1,000 more jobs through our BioSense Accelerator that addresses SMEs, high-tech SMEs in Serbia and in the region. We also influenced creation of many new laws in Serbia in the domain of research and innovations. We created a foundation for base funding for research in our country. And all of that led to a shift in the environment and to the shift in how science and innovation are perceived by the decision makers. So all of a sudden, Republic of Serbia decides to step up. So instead of 15, they invested more than 20 million euros. We attracted 40 plus million euros additional funding from European sources, and not only managed to fight a brain drain to a certain extent, but also to turn Serbia, the perception of Serbia as a research destination. Some years ago, nobody in Europe thought of going to Serbia and having their research careers there. Nowadays, we are hiring people from all over, from US, from France, from Germany. So I think our government also, it was a learning curve for them as well. And now we see a very large investment at the national level of 300 million euros in Bio4 campus, so biotechnology. So it was a learning curve that showed to everybody that investing into research really creates new impact for the economy, for the people, for the country.
This is a great demonstration of the multiplier effect and a very, I think, good case study to demonstrate. So next question is for Romi. Romi, quantum technologies are set to revolutionize the way that many industries operate by enabling some performance of tasks that were previously considered impossible. And you're really at the forefront of this revolution with Terra Quantum, where a big part of your work is focused on building the networks between science and industry and solving these complex problems to application of quantum technology. So what do you see as the most exciting applications of quantum technologies, and looking at it both from the today's perspective and maybe 10 years ahead? You had a wonderful presentation this morning, and I would really like you to summarize the key applications for our audience today.
Well, firstly, again, thank you so much for having me on this panel. And also, I love Montenegro. It's such a beautiful place. And as Matjaž said, I'm looking forward to be back next year. To summarize the breakfast in 2 minutes is going to be a little bit challenging, but I'll just share this with the audience. For those who are new to quantum computing, a very simplistic way of understanding what it does, it's like the next journey of AI. We've already, as Matjaž said, when we look at deep learning, we're now solving problems we never thought we could do. Quantum computing will do the next level of that. We can take much more complexity. We can look at models and systems that before, like we think about drug discovery, for example, very important part. Billions of dollars get spent into actually designing drugs and testing them. If we can reduce that even by half, That's a huge saving, but also importantly, we can accelerate the personalization and the delivery of these drugs to the right diseases and the right people. That's something we're doing with quantum computing. We're able to model these molecules much larger. That's in the simulation space. If we look at machine learning, one of the challenges of machine learning is the amount of data that we're actually using today. This data, it's billions and billions of lines of code that get put into these machines, and that actually takes a lot of computational power. What if we could actually use less data to get the same or greater accuracy by having a smarter, more intelligent system? That's quantum computing. And on top of that, what if we can get greater prediction accuracy? For the medical space, if we're looking at surgery and we're trying to figure out where is the actual cancer in your body so you don't have to damage other cells around it. Or in energy, where you're trying to predict renewable energy and output better. These are areas machine learning helps. And then there's optimization. I think this is really important. Optimization is, we're always dealing with problems, whether it's logistics. We have a good friend in the audience from Lufthansa here, Erin, who knows that the Lufthansa flights are always late. What if we could plan those flights better? What if we could plan that better and make it, we can understand exactly how to optimize that, saving money and increasing profits. This is what's happened today because we can take quantum software and deploy it on the existing machines. The next 10 years, these machines will be ready, the actual hardware. Then the world's our oyster. We don't even know some of the problems. But imagine we can start building models for the climate to predict when the next forest fire is coming. Or we can start actually model large metallic structures to build carbon capture. So in addition to we don't have to rely on our seas to sink the CO2, we can actually have a full regenerative system. I can talk about for hours, but I just wanted to give you a flavor. So the next 10 years are super exciting in our space.
So a lot of unknowns still, but very exciting. Next, Andreas, so we're talking, we touched upon the improvements in energy efficiency and grid infrastructure and the energy systems altogether. We know that you are pioneering some of the green technologies for the energy infrastructure. And my question is, how can these technologies be used to speed up the energy transition? And second of all, given the aging infrastructure that we have in the Adria region, do you think these technologies can be applied here?
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me as well. And I'm impressed to sit next to 4 scientists, so I feel humbled by all the intelligence. I think, first of all, I want to make a remark about the region and the opportunities that this region has for innovation, because innovation rarely happens from the incumbents. It's always the new one, the non-incumbent, the outsider that breaks through. And clearly, the Balkans have less of a history of huge companies that are currently at the forefront. So I think there's lots of opportunities, and we will see emerging, and I've heard some of the examples already of new companies emerging in the region that will be possibly the leaders of the next scientific breakthroughs or innovations, and hopefully that also on a larger scale. So I think that's always good to see that you don't have the legacy to carry around, because innovation doesn't happen with legacy a lot. Yes, energy transition. So there's 2 sides of energy transition. The supply of new clean energy will not be sufficiently fast and sufficient enough volume. The fusion, solar, or other energies, they are growing in volume, but it will be impossible to catch up to the need to really replace fossil fuels in the foreseeable future if we want to reach only the 2 or 1.5 degree goal. I think there's enough studies out there that show that we really need to be faster. So we cannot only tackle the supply side, we also need to tackle the demand side and become more efficient, as we have heard in the last panel from architecture, how much can be done. But we also simply can reduce our energy consumption in other smart ways. This is what we are doing with our company. There's lots of times when there's not enough renewable energies available. What happens in these times? Then dirty energy sources get added to the mix. Diesel generators, coal power plants, and others. But you could exactly, and we're speaking about Lufthansa, Lufthansa is applying the same principle. If there's too many people who want to take the plane, they pay people not to take the plane. You get 300 euros when you don't take the plane, because theoretically, Lufthansa would have to send a second plane just for you. So this principle applied to energy consumption means when there's not enough green energy, we ask our clients, industrial clients, commercial research, to reduce the energy consumption for just a short while below the level they would normally do. And so then that replaces the firing up of a coal power plant or the diesel generator or others to be there when there's not enough solar or wind energy. And we actually already have a client in Serbia that I had the opportunity to announce last year as our first project in Serbia with Metalfa steel mill. And so it's up and running and working, and we are happy to get more clients over time here.
That's amazing that it's getting traction already in the region. Okay, that's great. We're going back to Uranik. So Uranik, we know that sustainability is one of the key focus areas of your acceleration programs for startups. And I'm just wondering, given your experience, what are the key and the biggest challenges that you see in terms of sustainability innovation, and how can this be, incentivized through your programs? And then on the other hand, do you think that the Adria region has the potential to become a sustainable innovation hub?
We'll share this one. So thank you again. Very exciting to hear many different things, and absolutely it echoes what we're trying to achieve, I think, together. Yes, Plug and Play has around 6 sustainable hubs around the world. Most of them are related to corporate innovation and companies really wanting to address sustainability as an issue. Our latest program is in Sweden, and I think it serves as a great model for our region on the way a public entity and a private company come together to solve most of their pressing issues. So in our case, in our latest program in Sweden, it's Volvo Group, a mobility company with Port of Gothenburg, because also Port of Rotterdam is one of our clients, but Port of Gothenburg and Volvo Group, together with their tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, have come together to really address some of their pressing issues in the field of sustainability. So obviously that's one case which we can really look up to as a model of really identifying essentially the immediate needs that the company or the community has, or in this case even a public entity has, and really opening up and creating that open innovation platform, which is the new term, I would say relatively new term, in which companies are not only focusing on their R&D efforts, but they're understanding that third-party innovation exists out there, and they are pursuing this innovation and finding channels to really get to that innovation and embed into their day-to-day processes and services. So with that being said, I think our role as Plug and Play is really to, again, facilitate, identify best innovations out there and connect them with different initiatives, be it from a public sector or a private sector. Back to be very specific, I think my mission today here is to really look up at 2 or 3 regional programs. And since we are in Montenegro, I really hope that by next year Montenegro will have its first Sustainability Accelerator program, in which startups from the region and beyond will come and solve some of the pressing issues that maybe the country or some of the corporates have here in order addressing. Likewise, we're looking at opportunities in Kosovo. We're talking with the Serbian government on biotech, where we would bring our corporate network of some of the biggest corporates in the world. Albania is as well interesting, and so on and so forth. So I would like to use the opportunity definitely to continue this discussion on how we as an organization can help to interconnect with our network of corporate partners as well as our number of startups in order to address these issues.
So this is an open call for both
Absolutely.
the governments and corporates. Okay, and a call for Biljana as well. We will pass the message. Matjaž, we know that research has shown that there are multiple positive effects of research and investment in research and development on economic development and economic growth, and both in developing and emerging market economies. And looking at the statistics, we know that R&D expenditures at the global level are on average about 2.71% of GDP, whereas in our region, in most of the countries, especially of the Western Balkan, this figure is well below 1%. In Slovenia, it's about 2%. So in which particular areas of research and development do you think there needs to be more investment so that we can propel this region and development in this region to sustainable growth?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So before I answer, I would like to just say that I love the point that Andreas has made, because, and I'll try to reiterate it with my own words, it's really important to understand that science can help us tackle the problem of climate change. But we cannot count on science alone to do it. So we need a policy change. So an energy transition is also a policy change, because we know pretty well what's going on with the planet. And there are, so let's say we have basis for action, and we need to implement it more. So we are not failing in science, but we can do a lot of improvement policy-wise. As for the question, I would say short-term investments, definitely energy transition in all its shapes and forms. For the long-term investment in science, this is literally $1 million question, because I can illustrate with a very simple example. So imagine somebody asked Albert Einstein in 1905 to improve the navigation system. He could probably do it, but he would probably not say, okay, let's try to redefine how we perceive space and time, and let's develop a new theory of warped space-times, because this down the line will enable us to do a GPS navigation system. But now today we use it. So it's really difficult to anticipate with let's say, deep science, what and in what way it will be applied. And the only certainty we can have is that it will be applied. You know, it's like that anecdote. I think Benjamin Franklin was asked at one point, no, sorry, Michael Faraday was asked about his electromagnetism experiments. You know, they asked him, okay, so what's the gain here? You know, why can we use this? And Michael Faraday said, I'm not really sure about the answer now, but someday you will be collecting taxes on this, you know. So I think this is the way. So short-term investment, energy transition, long-term investment, I think investments across the board. And I would also like to say, so I'm not an economist, and I'm not coming from a, let's say, scientific idealist perspective. I'm coming from an economic pragmatist perspective when I ask, I'm really fascinated that science is underfunded, you know, because there are few venues of human endeavor which have so much return on investment, and yet it's underfunded. But this is more a question for me than an answer to you, sorry.
Yeah.
May I just
Yes, please.
very quickly make a quick, just a follow-up, because something you mentioned is super important. Obviously, innovation alone, the research, but then also the laws, the legislation, but as well as the funding. And the model which we're pursuing right now, and the funding should come also from the private sector. So the ability to really utilize the research which happens in universities, but then also open up, again, the corporate mindset in order to absorb that innovation will be very critical in upcoming years. So I think we need a narrative, a shift. We need to change our narrative as a community, business and research community, where I think researchers have to get a bit out of their comfort zone and focus a bit more on they need to sell better their research, or they need to sell it, because a lot of research, as we know, especially in the region, has been sitting a lot internally within universities without finding ever or even pursuing commercialization, if we might call it. And then likewise, the corporates that have really focused on their internal innovation heavily, they're looking at other opportunities. And I think this is super critical part with legislation. And this should bring the funding, I would hope. So, thanks.
Thank you, Uranik. I think this is a great digression and a great introduction of my next question for Vesna, who has a lot of experience working with the industry on commercialization and collaborative efforts on research and development in the agriculture field. And I know that you also have projects where you are aiming to boost the entrepreneurial skills of scientific community, because I think this is also very important that scientists start to think with a business mindset on their mind, because in the end of the day, the basic research is only as good as it is applied to the real economy. So, Vesna, can you tell me, in your experience building these partnerships with industries and both with the governments and industries actually, what challenges have you encountered and how did you address them to get and to leverage the academic research to effectively meet the developmental needs? And on the other hand, what kind of obstacles have you seen on the path to diffusion of these innovative technologies from the science world to the real economy?
So I fully agree with everything that Matjaž and Uranik said. And then when you add the field of agriculture, things get even more tricky. So agriculture is super important. We all need food. We need more food. We need healthy food. For the region, it is in all of the countries a very significant portion of the GDP. Very large percentage of population is working in agriculture and in food industry. And then you want to digitalize it. You want to push new technologies into a very traditional sector, into a sector that cannot afford the risk of trying and failing because the cycles are annual. So if you fail, you are just out of business and you are out of food. So there is a lack of trust from the side of the farmers, but not only farmers, even the big industry here in the region very often tends to buy off-the-shelf solutions from abroad, from, let's say, advanced countries, rather than to invest into local innovation, local knowledge, and get some custom-made solution. But there is also fault for this on the side of researchers who are very often not prone to doing demand-driven research. We still talk about this fundamental and applied research. I don't really agree every research is applied earlier or sooner or later, and very often it's much sooner than we think. So basically there is a shift that's needed in the mind of researchers, of the entrepreneurs, that they should focus their efforts towards what is needed, and they need to learn what is needed. And then there needs to be a shift in the minds of the regional industries. So basically, the answer is working in what is nowadays called quadruple helix. So it's not only the industry, it's the governments also that needs to use innovative solutions to improve their modes of operations. It's the the public sector, NGOs, citizens in the end. So it's only through the interaction of all four actors in an ecosystem that true change can be accomplished.
Thank you, Vesna. That's a great point. Romi, we're kind of continuing the discussion in this direction. So you have global experience with building these quantum technology ecosystems in both developing and emerging markets. And so the question is, what do you think the governments in our region should do to set the field, to set the ground for these disruptive technologies to thrive? And especially taking into account the huge brain drain problem that we have, and we had some discussions in previous panels about this.
No, I mean, first and foremost, there's so many good points that have been shared on the panel so far. And I think, Andreas, your point about being the incumbent is a really interesting point. I think my experience with quantum computing and advanced technology shows that some people feel scared, or they feel that, is it too advanced for me to get involved in? Should we be investing in this, or should we be focusing on the basic stuff and getting following the path of what was done before? And growing up in Kenya, a country in Africa where they had this exact problem, but if you look at what they did in telecommunications, they leapfrogged. It's an example for all of us in this region in particular. There's so much wealth and talent in terms of a human capital perspective. It is the perfect place to start looking at advanced technologies. And I think what's interesting about this region, from my perspective, is the levels of education. If I compare other growth regions in the world, maybe they don't have the same depth of education. And there's a historic trend or example for me that people go through university and there is deep science. I mean, look at our panel today. People who are looking at the most cutting edge parts of our society, energy, oceans, agriculture. So if you don't invest in these advanced technologies and create the ecosystem to let that thrive, you're not only stopping, I think, the current economy to grow, but you're also stopping the path for the future, and to create a path where actually you're going to build whole new industries around it. So one thing we've been doing with quantum computing is working between public sector, private sector, and then also the SME side. So we build these hubs, and the idea is you need to firstly provide infrastructure. That's really important. You need to actually have access to compute. But this compute has to be scalable, it has to be cost effective, and we've got to start thinking from a sustainability perspective. How can we make sure it's green? Then you need the people to use these machines. That's where you need the governments to create the programs so researchers can actually start developing and actually finding solutions with this technology. But you need businesses to also give the use cases. You need businesses to ask for things and to give that investment to let that happen. Then after that, you need SMEs and startups around this, because startups are the guys that are going to try the different things. A big corporate can't do that. They don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the risk appetite. You bring all of this together in a hub, and that's where I think you can actually have a great chance to facilitate these technologies. But it really takes a lot of work. And I think it's also important, us as a technology company, to see how can we support emerging economies, because democratization of technology is essential. What I'm personally really scared of is Western Europe and North America having this huge advantage in 10 to 15 years where they own all the IP, all the machines, all the insight. They've taken talent from all these different regions in the world to build this IP. And guess what? The problems exist in our countries. The problems exist and the opportunities exist here. So if the governments don't act fast now and they don't provide that opportunity, if the public sector and the investors don't put the money in, we're going to look 15 years forward or back and go, wow, we lost an opportunity. So I think, I know it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but my point is democratization of tech is really essential. And I think it is very difficult, but that's where all of us need to work together and bring these synergies so we can actually see, look at a really good future technology ahead.
That's a great message, and I think this technological breakthroughs and revolution really gives us an opportunity in our region to leapfrog to sustainable development from the level where we currently are. So we really need to make sure we
May I add
Yes, please.
a point to that? First of all, I wouldn't be so afraid of Western European countries. They are all already too complacent. The new Central European countries are way more hungry, so I think there's a fantastic opportunity. And what has changed dramatically over the last 30, 40 years is for science and for really deep tech development is access to private capital. That did not exist 40, 50 years ago. All these programs had to be government funded. And now you have astonishing long-term programs that are privately funded. If you look at, I mentioned that briefly, fusion energy, which has been obviously always the next big thing for the last 50 years, 5 years in the coming, but there's significant amount of investment deployed now, private capital deployed behind that. I just yesterday, not here, but somewhere else, met a gentleman who thinks he can attack the largest chip maker, Nvidia, because he believes he can build chips that will not be hot anymore, which is obviously a huge problem into chip making. So this person was not in Montenegro, but it could have very well been in Montenegro because it doesn't matter. He has a few co-founders. He has raised 4 million so far. This can happen here as well. So I think what's important to create also tax-wise the right incentive structure so that venture capital is attracted here and to allow them to give the lead and then have government programs that perhaps add on to privately funded enterprises. And yes, the scientific community needs to be open to accept that, but that's also, I think, a great opportunity if you are able to do that because the historical education level is very, very good in this region.
Can I just add to that as well?
Yes, please.
I think as a startup as well, and Terra Quantum's fortunate in quantum computing that we're actually asking a lot of this private investment. I mean, we raised 100 million in a Series A, which is crazy for a technology that's still in its infancy. But I think what's very important as well is to prove results. And I think this is one thing I think startups like us have learned is, yes, you have a long-term path and you have the vision of where you want to be, but you need to have applications and examples of success so the private community can actually see there is a path. And I think that's one thing we're learning, that if we don't do that and we try to at least have it as a kind of frontline as a startup, is make sure you can deliver on what you promise, make sure you're honest, but also have the vision for the future.
Thank you. And I really like this concept of, well, I would basically call it, and maybe equally to the concept of entrepreneurial states that Mariana Mazzucato is arguing for. And I believe that these small economies, especially Montenegro, has a great potential to become an entrepreneurial state, a destination for digital nomads from all over the world. The last question is for Andreas. And so, Andreas, can you tell us a little bit more about the possible applications of digital technologies, especially to the commercial real estate and retail sectors that you're working on? I believe you have some case studies. So can you share with the audience a little bit from your experience in applying technologies to these sectors?
Well, yeah, I obviously mentioned already the thing we are doing. And there the interesting thing is also, obviously, we need to work with big corporations. We are a startup and we need to work with big corporations. And that's one of the most fundamental challenges to be accepted by large corporations if you come with a new technology and that it's independent, I think, from our solution. And there are always a lot of stakeholders to be convinced because you need to convince the CEO of the company to implement our solution. You need the local engineer on the ground to accept it. And so there are a lot of stakeholders that one needs to convince. And I think it's probably a good advice for all startup companies who need to sell to big corporations. It's very different when you sell to individuals than if you sell to big corporations, to find the right mix of talent and experience in your startup team. Because if you don't have some credibility and also some experience, then it is even more difficult for the young people who usually come up with these new solutions to get into the door. And that's something where the right mix of talent and experience, I think, can be very successful. But this is for B2B driven innovation, one of the major problems. And I think also Plug and Play is trying to address this in these partnerships. I think that's a very, very important thing also. So if young companies can partner, or startups can partner with large corporations.
Couldn't agree more.
Can I do
Yes,
also
please.
just a quick follow-up on that? Because obviously the startup corporation partnership is, again, imperative for any success. But something that, if we're going on to that advice mode for startups, something that we've seen along our partnerships is that very oftentimes startups try to sell the whole solution for corporates. And corporates are not looking at the whole solution of what the startup has to offer. And many times they're looking maybe at one feature as an initial step to creating that trust and relationship, which hopefully then would evolve to become a long-lasting and sustainable partnership. So understanding the needs of corporates, it's very essential. And again, it should come from corporates oftentimes, because the open innovation concept is relatively new, as I said. But again, startups need to understand that maybe not the whole solution is fit for a corporate, and trying to identify, and maybe this also relates to the question that the last question, but really understanding the needs of the corporate or any other client. But in this case, we're talking to B2B, and addressing that very small feature maybe, and trying to create that trust is super important. And oftentimes in our what we call deal flow sessions, where we introduce startups and corporates together, we see some sort of a disappointment, partially because this lost in translation and miscommunication happens at the very human level, not technology level. While the technology is there, the need is there, even the price is oftentimes affordable, you can see that you need this dialogue to be at a very different level of speaking, and I think we can improve that as well.
What Vesna said earlier, by the way, related this about how you get into the organization. And I think a lot of the time, new technology is super exciting, and we get calls, we are flooded with calls because everyone wants to know, oh, what is quantum? The next part is, okay, would you want to buy our solution? And that decision, we find, isn't inhibited because the technology is bad. It's because the people don't want to change. It's because somebody goes, well, if I try your solution and it fails tomorrow, my whole system breaks down. So back to my friend at Lufthansa, yeah, we're going to optimize your routes, but then actually if we mess it up, there's even a much bigger cost to pay. But that's why we have to have better conversations, better communication, and have this understanding of each other. But I think also, Andreas, you said, is when you build your team, have the right industry mix. So know what you're focusing on. Get somebody from the industry as an expert to guide your technology. Because a lot of technology is created in a hole, and you kind of think, I've created a solution to life, but actually the person who's going to be buying it doesn't care about it. So that's why having that mix, I think, is really important as well.
Thank you, Romi.
I just wanted to add that, yes, you're right. Pushing a new technology in any field is very difficult. But that's where, after a certain time, success stories help. So we have shown by now to agricultural industries and companies that for, let's say, 5,000 hectare producer, just by using AI algorithms with absolutely no additional investment, they get around 1 million euros of extra profit. Or we've shown with our solutions for the government that instead of spending 2 months to distribute subsidies, they now do it in 1 day. And then, as you also mentioned, sometimes you cannot even foresee all the applications that your solutions might have. We were focusing on the agri-food industry, on the government, on the ministries, And then banks and insurance companies come along and say, well, this is exactly what we need. So now agricultural loans do not have to be that expensive because there is data to prove what the farmer is doing. Insurance can be given. Only 3% of farmers insure their crops here in the region because there is no trust. Now digital technologies provide this trust in the system. So all of a sudden, you know, once you start going into this, it just branches out.
No, absolutely. Success is the best measure, and actually the best way to prove it.
Commercializable, these are the fields which I'm not directly involved in, so I can give you an answer, but I cannot elaborate on it. It's biotech. So they've been working a lot with biotechnological solutions and also with sinks of microplastics. So these were the two venues which have proven to be lucrative. So this is as far as monetization goes. But there are many exciting things, and I would love to talk more about it. Yeah, also bacteria, yeah.
Thank you. I think we ran out of time, so unfortunately we have to close it, but we can continue discussions offline. And thank you once again for sharing this insightful views from your perspectives and your careers and sending some really tangible call to actions to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you.